If you're a woman growing a business, earning more than ever before, and realizing that more money doesn't automatically mean more wealth, this conversation is for you. I am thrilled to be joined by Hannah Wardenburg, wealth strategist and co founder of The Wealth Collaborative, a boutique wealth creation firm designed specifically for female entrepreneurs. Hannah has spent her entire career in wealth management, starting in the traditional finance world and eventually managing over $100 million in assets for ultra high net worth clients. But here's the thing that I love about her: she and her business partner, Allie, noticed a huge gap in the financial space. Women like us, modern, ambitious, high earning entrepreneurs, were being completely overlooked when it came to true, customized financial guidance. They didn't need another budgeting app or a save your lattes advice. They needed a real partner who could help them turn income into lasting wealth. That's where the Wealth Collaborative comes in. Hannah's approach is grounded, strategic, and so refreshingly empowering. She's here to help us stop chasing the top line revenue just for the sake of it and instead focus on how to use our businesses as a tool for building true personal wealth. Not only is Hannah brilliant in the money space, she's also a mom, a military spouse, and someone who deeply understands the realities of building both a business and a beautiful, intentional life. I cannot wait for you to hear her perspective, her tips, and the way that she simplifies what can feel really overwhelming for so many of us. Let's get into it. Hannah, of many, many things that I love talking about, and maybe others don't, but I for sure do. I love talking wealth generation, revenue meets profit, and all things about building both a successful business, but certainly in light of how that shapes your family and your future. So I'm so thrilled to have you on the podcast today.
And I'm so excited to be here because I also love to talk about this thing. So it's going to be a great conversation.
Who knew that like budgets and P&L and all of these like hairy, scary things are actually like a joy to discuss?
To some, and that's exactly why I do what I do, for sure. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. As I mentioned, everyone, Hannah is the co-founder of the Wealth Collaborative. And over the course of your career, Hannah, you have been in this world the entire time, but only over the last year have you been an entrepreneur and building the Wealth Collaborative. Can you talk about what influenced you to start your own business?
Yeah. So I'll actually take you all the way back in time to when I first became a financial advisor, because my career began in the financial advising world where I actually did have to go out and build my own book of business. That's how most financial advisors get kickstarted. But when you work for one of the traditional large, which I worked for one of the biggest nationwide financial advisory brokerages in the US, you're under their name, you're under their umbrella, all their resources, all the things, but you're still responsible for bringing clients on. So that piece of it wasn't necessarily new to me in starting my own business, because that's how I've run my, business over the last 6 or 7 years. I just worked under a larger corporation. But, with that came a lot of red flags, a lot of compliance, a lot of rules to follow. And once I figured out that there was a way that I could actually step out and create my own financial advisory business where I could serve, the clientele I wanted to serve, and I didn't have to put restrictions on how much money they had to have in the bank before they could work with me. And, I could structure the compensation in a way that just made sense specifically for business owners. Once I figured that piece out, it took me 7 years into my career, but that's when the Wealth Collaborative was born last year. So I've been doing this all day, every day since I got out of college and started knocking on doors. That's how I first got my first couple of clients locally the last 7 years. Instagram has been born, and just doing more non-traditional ways of building a business. And so with that, it's been really fun to adapt and serve so many female entrepreneurs that have also grown up in this, what we call like the new money movement. So that's when last year, it was actually in the fall of 2023, which you and I have talked offline about this, about my husband was on a 7-month long deployment. He came back. Our daughter was 10 months old at the time. And I was working in that traditional corporate job. I had actually transitioned from running my own book of business. I left that book behind and I went to work for another traditional advisory firm that worked with ultra high net worth clients. So a lot of experience under my belt. I managed just over 100 million in assets while I was there. And, I had grinded along during my husband being on that deployment, both momming to a newborn and literally pumping in my office and studying for my certified financial planner designation all at the same time. And once he got home and life settled into a new routine, it was like, what's next? And to me, the next obvious step was to take everything that I had packaged up and learned throughout my career and finally bring it to the women that I knew really needed it the most, as I just could see these female entrepreneurs really lacking somebody that they could trust to go to have these financial conversations, as they're starting to now make more money than ever. And that is when the Wealth Collaborative was born. So we officially opened our doors in April. Here we are, just shy of a year later. We have served dozens of women and their families, and we're growing. And it's just been an incredible ride so far.
Happy 1 year anniversary, friend.
Thank you. I'm excited to celebrate in about 10 days. Yeah.
I relate so much to that, the chaotic juggling of mom, corporate life, your spouse is away, and there's a whole host of things that our community endures when it comes to your spouse being away for a week, a month, or I don't know, half a year, a full year. And it is a weight and a load that not many can understand, nor should they really need to. But I have to assume that might have influenced your desire to be like, okay, I'm ready to write my own journey, to carve my own path. Did that influence your journey at all?
It 100% did, because when he came back home, my husband is also an entrepreneur. He left corporate about 6 months in after college saying, I can't do this. I can't go into work at 6 a.m. and sit at a desk till 3 p.m. and then try to go do, live my life. It was very out of alignment for him. And he became a real estate agent, but specifically land real estate. So we live in Missouri, where he likes to hunt and fish. And so he gets to do what he loves and be in the outdoors all day, every day. And so when he came home from his deployment and kind of got to jump back into this world where he had all this freedom and flexibility, and he could pick up our daughter early and things like that. And I was still very much tied to a routine and a commute and client meetings that were on the calendar at 4 p.m. on a Thursday. And I had, no control really over my life and my time and how that was spent. That's when I was like, okay, something has to shift, because now as a mom, and now a mom that has my family back together, I have different priorities. I wasn't in survival mode anymore. And so that's where deciding to start the Wealth Collaborative, I knew from the very start I was going to build this my way, and certainly in a way where I wasn't going to eventually burn out and hate what I was doing, because I was getting very close to that point when I was in corporate.
Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine so many of the women that you serve, that I work with, they all feel very much the same. I find that while our journeys and our paths are very different, there is oftentimes this moment that shapes their trajectory moving forward, and they completely begin a new journey. And for me, that's true. I think that's true for you. And that is, again, the theme and the culture of this community of women who do chart their own path, who are committed to saying, you know what, my priorities are different. My lifestyle looks different. And I want to be the person in charge of my schedule, my time, who I work with, the type of work that I do, and how that factors into my personal life, because this is not all just about business. While I know that I love working, you love working, it is in support of the life that we want to build in a holistic perspective. And so what I love about your work is that you are supporting women who kind of had that similar path. And the women that you're working with, they are making more money. They are finding ways to build wealth. But there is this, this old world, or this world that you came from that was old money, and now it's new money. Can you talk about the old money, new money trend that you're seeing?
Yes. Yeah. So we have really started speaking specifically to the woman that's part of the new money movement. And it's not restricted necessarily to a time frame per se, but I will say, if you're a woman that has either left your traditional 9 to 5 to now build something on your own, or you have decided, from the get-go, you were an entrepreneur and you've just charted your own way, and maybe nothing was handed to you and nothing was inherited to you. That's kind of what you think of when you think of old money. You're really creating. So we talk about women in the new money movement being wealth creators. And so you're creating new ideas, you're bringing new products and services to the marketplace, you're being a thought leader in your industry. And as a result of those things, you're now making more money. You're reaping what you sow, and you have more money to then go build your own personal wealth. And so that's really where then we've stepped in to actually support women in the new money movement that have maybe traditionally not been able to receive that advice and guidance, because the old money way of doing things, not just thinking about, wealth inheritors, but also thinking about people who have stayed traditionally. Think of the baby boomer generation who's stayed in the same corporate job for 30, 40 years. They've grown a large pension that they can then take out, or a 401k plan or something. That most advisors, they're going after people with that demographic, because at that stage of life, they have grown this large basket of wealth that now these advisors can manage. That's really what the traditional financial advisory services, that's why they're geared towards helping people that are near or in retirement, not necessarily the individuals who are in this beginning stage of building wealth, but they're picking up momentum so fast, they're going to be light years ahead by the time they're 60, but only if they're getting the proper advice and guidance on what they should be doing with their money now. So that was really the gap, was that the old money, what we kind of called advisors, they had not adapted yet to this opportunity of serving this demographic of specifically women in the new money movement, who are literally creating wealth with their passions, their purpose, doing it while they have families. But the result of that is more money being generated that they're then able to keep in their pocket and grow their own personal wealth, so they can change their lives, the lives of their family, kids, and generations to come. So that's where we have really structured our business to support them, even if you're not at the point yet where you have millions of dollars in the bank, like most traditional advisors are looking for when they look for an ideal client.
Well, see, Hannah, I love an underdog. I love an underdog. As someone who does not come from money or connections or a seat of power, I feel like individuals in my case, we kind of have this chip on our shoulder. We see how other people have gotten to where they are through the things that they maybe had the privilege of having or had access to. And so I do believe that there are women in our positions. We kind of have a chip on our shoulder, and we want to have a different scenario for our family looking forward. I grew up in a lower middle class family. I mean, we were very fortunate and blessed, but it looked a lot different than the peers that I worked with on Capitol Hill. And so now I'm in a position where I can change the trajectory of my family moving forward through my business. But I think an important distinction to make in our community for those who may not be keenly aware of the difference between revenue and profit and wealth, can you talk about those distinctions and how to strategically plan for the difference between revenue and profit and how to grow that into generational wealth?
This is where, when we have some clients coming to us and maybe they have stepped away from corporate to then go start their own business, one of the biggest gaps we see is just an understanding of that your business revenue is no longer your actual income, right? Your income, your personal income, is the money that gets deposited into your bank account so that you can personally spend for your family. But every single dollar that you make in your business, most businesses, if not all businesses, have at least some level of expenses to keep that business up and running, right? So we cannot take every single dollar of our revenue that we make and pay ourselves an income. And so now it's this whole new song and dance where we have to first make the money, but now we have to figure out how to manage the money so that you can pay for your business expenses, reinvest back into the business to grow, potentially hire on some more individuals to help you grow your team, your services, whatever that may be. And then from there, can you pay yourself and make sure that you're paying yourself what you need for your family to hit your own goals? And so we talk about it in the way of, you have to have two very powerful money making machines. One of them is your revenue generating machine, and the other is your wealth generating machine. But it all starts with that top number, that revenue, right? So you have your revenue, then you pay your expenses from the business. What's left over is your profit. From your profit, then can you take a distribution to pay yourself an income? And then from there, you have your personal family's income, your expenses, and then you have your savings and your investments. And then the money that you're putting into those savings and investments build your wealth generating machine. That is where your money is actually going to work for you. You're investing it into things that can work, that do not require maybe your time or your level of expertise, like stocks or real estate, or you're buying shares of other small businesses. And those are all assets that are building, they're growing, and they are building up your personal net worth. So that's kind of how it all works together. But I think kind of biggest gap is initially women, especially I feel like we're fed this so much on social media, like, oh, I've replaced my 9 to 5 income. My business hit 6 figures. But if your business hit 6 figures in revenue and you were actually taking home 6 figures in income last year, I would bet that most of those business owners, they're not actually making 6 figures in income. Their business generated 6 figures in sales. And so that's a big differentiator for women, is you kind of have to take this extra step now to make sure that you can pay yourself what you desire to make, but it also has to cover the business expenses to keep the business running too. So it's just a bigger puzzle and a lot more pieces to put together as a business owner. It's not impossible, but there's just a lot more strategy involved.
Well, and having someone who is a professional in any area of business is going to serve you in a greater capacity in the short and long term. So you can, one, understand those distinctions, and two, plan long term. Hannah, can you talk about some of the times where you have supported your clients and found ways to save them either in their profit margins or in their tax strategy? How have you helped support your clients by stepping into their business, understanding their business and their life, and then finding solutions for them?
Yeah. So this happens a lot when we are working with a business owner client that's seen growth in their business a lot of times really fast. Like, we are talking about women who have started businesses from 2020 on that are now hitting 6 figures, multiple 6 figures, and 7 figures. So that is very fast growth in terms of just being the person to manage all of that money. And it does take some more key players on your team to make sure that everything is being managed properly. And so what we start with all of our clients is we're really digging into the numbers and helping them understand how the business and how they pay themselves, and even helping them understand some of the expenses and reinvestments they're making into their business all play into their tax strategy. And we have to coordinate with your CPA and your bookkeeper and all of the things. But really, if you are trying to do what you do best and you're in the day-to-day of serving clients and selling and recording podcasts and also making dinner and going to soccer practice and all the things, most of the times looking at the numbers and really getting nitty-gritty with the data ends up getting put on the back burner. And so when we work with clients and you actually have that dedicated time to sit down with someone who all we do every day is sit and look at the data and numbers, a lot of times what we'll find are just missed opportunities and mistakes, quite honestly. And so, I mean, we have had many, many a times where we found that business owners are mixing personal and business expenses and maybe not writing off certain expenses that they should, that need to absolutely go through their business, maybe just because they weren't aware. I mean, we have saved business owners thousands of dollars in taxes just in that alone, coordinating with their CPA, because we understand the full picture. Missed opportunities for investing in your retirement and taking more profits out of the business and putting them into something like a retirement account that's going to actually grow your wealth and also give you a tax deduction in the current year. And so there's just so many strategies at play that not everyone can know everything, right? This is exactly why we hire professionals, why we bring in other experts in all sorts of areas of business. But we find a lot of times that that financial expert kind of comes last. And so when we first sit down to work together is when we have to do a lot of cleanup, a lot of education, and a lot of just like getting on the right track so we can get to a point where we're being very proactive instead of reactive. So it is nothing to be shameful about or guilty about. I was just on a call yesterday with someone. She's like, why aren't we taught this? And I said, I know it's so frustrating, but that's why I'm here now, is to take a lot of that lift off of your shoulders.
100%. And I'm fortunate to be on your newsletter list. And yesterday, I know you guys were talking about IRA contributions for 2024, like all of these small things that make such a difference in the long term. And it's like the big, hairy, scary thing, I think, as a grown up and a business owner is tax season. So having someone at the very least to understand that, if you code things differently or allocate them differently and you have a professional oversee that, you are not only going to be saving money, you can reinvest it advantageously. That again impacts that bigger picture long term.
Yep.
And I think there's so many blind spots that we encounter with our clients, no matter what you do, but specifically for the money mindset and navigating people's finances. It's almost like we have to open up our closet where we stuff everything in there, and maybe it looks organized and it's polished and things are color coded. And sometimes maybe it's a mess. So can you talk about any of the blind spots or even the mindset challenges that you navigate with some of your clients?
Yeah. So this is actually a really important piece of our process that I really do think differentiates us as advisors. One is that obviously when you're talking to us, like you and I chatting, most of our clients look just like us, like women that are navigating motherhood and families and building a business and just being in that similar stage of life. So it's very helpful to have those conversations where you feel like you're already talking to somebody that just gets you. But we do really focus on establishing that trust and getting to know you beyond just looking at your numbers, because we all have our own money stories. And so that's really actually where we start with every single client, is we dig in right off the bat to your money story, because how we want to work together is being able to understand, how do you think about money? What are maybe some observations or habits or, mindsets you have, or things you've been telling yourself, or things others have told you, or what are the people around you? How do they think and feel about money? And how is that influencing how you currently think and feel about money as someone who's now maybe outgrowing the people around you? And so we actually start with the money story conversation so we can really understand your mindset around it. Now, we're not expert money mindset coaches, but we do, because we take on this role of implementing high level strategy and making your money work for you and building wealth and, getting to the point where there's multiple seven figures in your personal net worth. We have to be able to navigate how you're going to think about that as your wealth is growing and what might inhibit you from growing. So we start with that money mindset, money story conversation with every client we work with. And what I love sometimes when we work with those spousal clients is maybe they haven't really hashed out that conversation before. And we always get that, like, do you want to go first? Do you want to go first? And it's so interesting and so fun. But it really just says a lot about your willingness to take action, to put in the work, to say yes to opportunities. It says a lot about your stomach for risk tolerance, which is just a fancy way of saying, like, hey, if we're going to be investing money, it's going to go on a little bit of a roller coaster ride. Like, are you going to get sick? Are you going to be like screaming to get off? Are you going to be hands in the air like, whoa, this is amazing? So we start really with understanding how you think about it.
Well, and in this particular market, I mean, right now, today is April 8th. We're about to approach April 15th. Everything in the stock market right now is a little cuckoo with tariffs and everything else. So, like, I don't know if people are hands in the air right now. Like, I've been checking my retirement accounts. I'm like, oh no, oh no. So,
Yeah.
it's a very personal experience. How do you find that people navigate that, like, in their marriage? Because yes, there's the business wealth strategy, but it really comes down to that personal plan, that personal strategy. And it's not just one person typically. Typically it's a marriage and they're two people, and some people have different money stories and different tolerances for risk. So have you encountered any like awkward conversations in your clients'
Oh
meetings
my
before?
goodness. And if any of my clients are listening, I love y'all. And sometimes I do feel like I'm a moderator therapist.
Therapist, yes.
But, these are important conversations to have. And at the end of the day, we are realizing that we're all just individual people that did grow up under different circumstances. But here's specifically to the point about working with couples. Our guiding light when we are working with couples is figuring out, what do you want your life together to look like from this day forward? Because when we're talking about money stories and the way you think about money, that is all the past. That's how you grew up. If you're now navigating finances with a spouse, or maybe you also have children, it is like we have an opportunity here to charter a new path forward. And so, getting on the same page is really important. It doesn't mean that our brains have to think identically, but what we do have to have are shared goals, a shared vision, and a shared strategy for how we're actually achieving those goals. And that's really where we step in with clients, is figuring out those three things. What is the goal? What's the vision? Then breaking that down into what are your goals, and then breaking it down to what is the strategy for achieving those goals. And I think I've been married for 5 years, but we've been together for almost 13. So we've grown up together. And it wasn't until definitely into the first year or two of our marriage where we figured out how different we thought about about money. But now that we have that shared vision and goals and strategy for our family, it certainly makes navigating conversations a lot easier. And so, kind of back to your question, like your point about the blind spots, I think the blind spot for most women is they're just caught up in one aspect of money, which is making money. And most young families, they're in that same boat. We're, making money. So we bought our first house, and then we got the promotion. So now we got a new car, and then we did this and we took this vacation. And it just spirals into like, okay, we're making more money. So now seemingly we can afford to do more things or have bigger things or better things or nicer things. But really, there's still no strategy aside from, what's the next 6 months going to bring us to say, what do we really want the rest of our life to look like? And how is our money actually helping us accomplish that? And so that's really the blind spot for most people, is that there's no strategy behind the money that you're making, yet you're very caught up in making money and working harder and spending more of your time to do it. But what is that actually doing for your life? Right. And so that's where we come in that conversation, is finding the vision and goals.
Which I think is a really important segue into understanding if your business is a lifestyle business or if you are building an enterprise. And that's something that you're really passionate about talking with your clients about. Can you talk about that a little bit, Hannah?
Yeah. So this really was stemmed from multiple conversations with female business owners and realizing that not every business has a wealth building opportunity beyond the money that you're currently making. So what do I mean by that? Some businesses are very heavily tied to the business owner, their personal brand, their thought leadership, their, face being pretty well like represented in the business, right? And so that's what we would call a lifestyle business. Maybe you are a coach or a service provider or a consultant or an influencer, just some common observations of categories. You'd be a lifestyle business where you're making money today, and the business can grow and it can scale. But at some point, if you were to say, okay, I'm done and I'm ready to walk away from the business, maybe that's 5 years from now. Maybe that's when you're 55 years old. I don't know exactly what that timeline looks like for you. But when you walk away, essentially the business is just going to shut its doors. And that means that there's no more revenue coming in because you're no longer the face of the brand. The business is not running without you. And therefore that income stream, that just gets cut off, chopped right there. But think about on the flip side, if you are growing a business where maybe you are developing a product, or you've developed some sort of like course or method that is being licensed out to other companies, or even a book of business like an insurance agent or a brick and mortar store, like a yoga studio or Pilates studio, something like that. That's what we'd classify as an enterprise business. And that's where you're actually holding on to potentially a tangible asset or some intellectual property that could be passed on, or better yet, sold to someone in the future, and they can continue to run the business and you don't. So what is the difference between these two in your wealth strategy? Well, one of them would require, the lifestyle business would require you to be reinvesting a lot more of the money that you're actually earning today into other wealth building assets to build your own personal wealth outside of your business. If you are an enterprise business, it might make more sense for you to be reinvesting dollars back into that business, because eventually that will scale that business's valuation. And when you go to exit that business, when you're, say, 55 years old and you sell it, you're going to get a big old paycheck that then you can reinvest back into your personal wealth. And so really the difference in those two journeys is saying, am I running a business where I need to be mindful of building my personal wealth over the next 10, 20, 30 years outside of the business, so that I have what we refer to as a nest egg when I leave that I can then live off of? Or is my business something that I should treat as an asset that I'm going to sell one day? Someone's going to hand me a check for $1 million, $2 million, $10 million bucks. And then at that point, I have my nest egg and I can go, take that and reinvest it and build my personal wealth there. So if you're missing understanding what kind of business you're running, you're really missing out on opportunity to figure out like that timeline is just getting shorter, right? Every day that we, are running our business is one day we're probably closer to shutting the business down, right? And so time is really the biggest asset that we have here. So just understanding what should the strategy be in how I'm building my personal wealth based on the kind of business that I'm running. We really need to figure that out now. It's also a really big blind spot of a lot of female entrepreneurs.
I think whenever you and I first got connected, really bonded over our fondness and enthusiasm for following Cody Sanchez. And she totally reshapes your mindset when it comes to not only running a business, but buying a business and selling a business. And that for me really reshaped how I think about my PR agency or the personal brand or everything that you're talking about, not only from a business management standpoint, but looking down the road of, okay, what does it look like? What does an exit strategy look like? And how can I build a business that can be sold in the future? And if you enter into business with an exit strategy, my guess is that you would be more successful in the long term and have a plan for the future.
That's part of that vision, goals, and strategy that we break down with every single client. And I will tell you, some of the clients that we've worked with, they had started their business as, maybe a side hustle while they were in their corporate 9 to 5. And then the goal transitioned them out of corporate into their business full time. And the business has grown. But beyond that goal of just transitioning out of corporate, there was really no other goal of saying, how long am I going to do this? How sustainable is my offer? Right? Is it something that, a lot of people want right now, but is this business going to be something that can evolve in 10, 20, 30 plus years? Because I'd anticipate that for most of us millennial moms out there, like that's how long we would anticipate working, or that's like the traditional retirement trajectory. And, or if you're saying, hey, my goal was transition out of corporate to do this for the next 10 years and then have complete financial freedom where I don't have to work if I don't want to, that accelerates that strategy that we have to implement for building your personal wealth. Because if you're saying, hey, by age 45, I want to be done working and you plan to live to 100, well, we better have the strategy in place where the money that you've earned during your working years in running your business or being in corporate, whatever that is, can actually sustain your lifestyle for the next 65 years, right? And so that's, to be quite honest, I wasn't going to go here in our podcast conversation, but I'm starting to really get passionate about sharing with female entrepreneurs this concept of what does life really look like beyond your business and how sustainable is it? I really truly think that the women that don't have an exit strategy, there will be an entrepreneurial bubble per se that pops. And when that bubble pops, it's going to force a lot of people out of running their business and they just might not have been prepared for that. And so that's why I think it's more important now than ever to be focused on how and what is the strategy for building your personal wealth alongside building your business so that you can be prepared for truly any scenario.
And I think that's part of those hard conversations that are really, really necessary, especially when you're talking about finances and personal wealth. And as if we don't have enough to think about as moms and business owners, like if you're not paying attention to these things, your life's trajectory will be shaped by that lack of attention now and in the future. And so I'm really glad that you're having those conversations. And it brings me back to like the personal side of this podcast of, at the end of the day, you and I, the women that are listening to this and watching this, we are business owners and professionals and successful entrepreneurs, but we're also moms. So I'm really curious, Hannah, how as a military spouse, as a mom of sweet little 2-year-old Peyton, and a spouse, how you are navigating and balancing all of the things in such a season of what I assume is a lot of growth for you and Allie.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do have a business partner, Allie. She's amazing. And we've co-founded the Wealth Collaborative together. So shout out to Allie. So even when I brought Allie on board as a co-founder, because I started the company in April of last year, she officially came on in August of 2024. One common conversation between the two of us was we will never build this business in sacrifice of our families and what we really want. And so I had kept that in mind as my guiding light, knowing that the reason I left corporate was so that I wasn't picking up my daughter after 5 o'clock every single day. And that, I didn't have to rush out the door or be rushing while I was nursing her in the morning at the time. And just all the things, my life just felt like rushed and chaotic and, just like I didn't have control over my time. And so the biggest thing for me is being really present where my feet are and having that control over my time. And so there's some non-negotiables that happen in my family. And I think this is where I've witnessed now being an entrepreneur, a lot of female entrepreneurs, because they just get caught up in chasing making money and the time that it takes for them to do it, having to give up some of these other pieces of their life that I just won't do. So for me, it looks like we literally make bacon and eggs and homemade sourdough for breakfast every single morning. We're always sitting at the breakfast table together. We cook dinner every single night. My husband and I go to the gym together in the afternoons, and I pick up Peyton like sometimes at 3 o'clock or 3:30, or we have weekends where we are completely unplugged, not working. I've communicated those boundaries with clients, and I mean, if I have inspiration or nap time happens and I want to, I absolutely do. But I really have, especially in this season of life, just really been trying to protect my peace, protect my time, and have some boundaries where my business doesn't run my life, but it certainly supports my life, and the other way around. My life supports my business, and my family has been so supportive. Last year, I went on a total of 12 trips, so for work. So I was gone once a month, which meant we had to have some extra hands around here, and everyone's been so supportive. I just really want to be present where my feet are. And so this has been 2025 has been a year of saying no to some opportunities, just because I realized last year I was gone way too much, and that felt out of alignment. I mean, for me, it is my daughter will remember us having breakfast and dinner together every single night. She will remember sleeping in on Saturday mornings and snuggling on the couch on Sundays, and not me sitting at my computer when she's home. And I certainly value her seeing how hard mom and dad work. And she will come in my office and pretend right here and be like, "I'm working." Shit, it's funny. But yeah, we have a lot of other values as a family, which revolve around cooking, taking care of ourselves, taking care of our bodies, church on Sundays, and all those things too. And fun, lots of fun. We live on a lake, so we have a lot of fun in the summer times.
Oh, I didn't know that, Hannah.
Yes, yeah, it's a lot of fun. So, yeah, anyways, Allie and I definitely share that, in that we want to build our business where our life is the most important thing, and our business just gets to support what we really want out of life.
And you just articulated your definition of success. And I'm so thankful that you did, because I think every definition is different. Every person's values or their aspirations or how much time they want to spend in their business or their childcare situation, like all of that is dictated by their individual personalized version of success. And breakfast with your kiddo every morning, non-negotiable part of that version of success. And that requires holding a boundary, I'm sure, and being really dedicated to protecting that. So I'm so glad that you shared that. I also share that as well. I mean, we're not making bacon and eggs every day, but we are having breakfast together every day.
My husband goes on long runs in the morning. That is his form of mindfulness and exercise. And he comes back and hungry. So he's always firing up bacon and eggs. And for that, I am grateful.
One of the questions that I also try to glean from people is, again, this concept of childcare. Do you guys have family nearby? Is Peyton in full-time care? What does that childcare situation look like?
Yeah. We are incredibly blessed, and we have always lived around family. And my mom, my husband's mom, and both of his grandmas who are still with us, they all take turns watching Peyton throughout the week. And so I really think we had entertained the idea right out of college of moving away, and we went to school less than an hour away from home, and so we had entertained that. And when we got the phone call that Alec was going to be going on a deployment and our daughter was a month old, my saving grace was the fact that we never left our hometown. It's still a dream of ours one day, but we have been so blessed, so grateful that Peyton is surrounded by both of her grandmas, her Mimi and her Grams, and both of her mamas all take turns watching her throughout the week. And what else that brings us is just we get extra family time too. She's getting it from them, but it's been wonderful where especially when Alec was gone, I rarely had to cook dinner for just myself and a 5-month-old. And so it's been really, really wonderful. But she's 2.5, she'll be 3 soon. So we did just start touring some schools, and we know she won't be our only forever. And so yeah, it'll be a hard transition for the grandmas when Peyton goes off to school here, probably in the fall. It's probably time. So yeah, it's been wonderful, but I really think that was a God thing calling us to stay here, even when we had the itch to leave a few years ago, because I probably that season would have been much harder to navigate without them.
It's a blessing having family nearby. And I love that not only for you and your business, but for Peyton, having that connection with her family and having so much time with them is so incredibly, I'm jealous. I'm a little jealous. Yeah.
It's very special. I say this all the time. Like, she's 2.5 now. She clearly does not know how lucky she is, but we will make it a point that she always knows how lucky of a little girl she is when she
Oh
grew
my
up.
gosh. Yeah. I grew up with my grandmother being like the matriarch of our family, and she
Mhm.
would pick us up from school, sleepovers and everything like that. And she is still like my favorite person. And so having that connection for you and for her is so incredible. And you mentioned, Hannah, that both you and your husband are entrepreneurs and investors. Can you guys talk about how you guys navigate your own personal wealth strategy as a couple? And
Love this question. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm happy to. So like I said in the very beginning, started out my career going into the traditional wealth management. So, I mean, I took my Series 7, 63, got all of my official licensing to be a financial advisor and to trade, like stock market assets. So all I knew was stock market, stock market, stock market. And my husband then enters into the real estate side of things. Specifically, land real estate is his wheelhouse, but we also do own a local, like, residential real estate brokerage as well. But so now what's been really cool is as I've grown in my knowledge and in investing and strategy, all of that with traditional assets like the stock market, we have also layered that in with buying real estate, buying commercial property. We bought and sold a piece of land last year that we did some improvements and work to. And then we also, speaking of the Cody Sanchez, read her book last year. We had already entertained business buying and buying boring businesses. And so last year we also partnered with someone and bought our first storage unit. In terms of our investing strategy, we have been very open to learning what all is out there and kind of in this stage of life that we're in right now, because we are long-term investors. I mean, our goal right now, we're building businesses, we're making money, we're managing our money smartly, living below our means. So when we have money that we can reinvest, and because we have this long-term mindset, we're really open to what that might look like until we kind of find a combination or strategy that we're really excited about. And as of now, we've gotten really excited about every single investment we've made. So it's not that we're diehards, real estate flippers or whatever. We make our retirement account boring contributions, and that my husband would say. But then, he finds properties or commercial properties, or like we fixed up a commercial property last year and flipped it into an office space. And now the storage unit, we're adding on new units and expanding to it. We are looking to buy our own probably family farm here soon, but looking at how we can make that income producing. And so there's just, again, there's so much to learn. And our breakfast table conversations most of the time are me and him asking each other questions about what's happening. He was just last night at dinner asking me about like, hey, what's happening in the stock market? Like, what can I be telling some of my clients and stuff like that? So when you are a long-term investor, that's why having the vision and the goals and then the strategy is so important, because there's so many different places that you can put your money to work. So really understanding what are the things that you just maybe should do because the strategy is simple, easy, effective, but also what are some of the things that really excite you, right? I know every business owner out there, they want to preach how, owning real estate's the best thing from a tax strategy perspective. So many truths to that statement, but I also have a lot of business owners that really would prefer to buy complementary businesses and not be a property manager and not have tenants or not, have repairs and things they have to take care of. So the long story short is, I think because we're both entrepreneurs, but specifically in areas where we deal with assets, our personal strategy is kind of all over the place at the moment, but we're long-term investors. And so we see these opportunities as ways that we can hold and grow our wealth, and, 1031 exchange out of them into new assets and things like that. So we are actually going to record our own podcast episode on that this weekend when we go to Nashville, because we're like, we have had quite a crazy year, and a lot of the ventures that we've started together. Not to mention we own 4 businesses between the two of us.
You said all over the place, but I heard diversified.
Oh, yes. Probably what I should have said. We are well diversified. Yes, we are. And which is something I certainly preach to our clients as well. But I definitely want clients to understand what they're invested in, and I want them to be excited about what they're invested in. And so I'm just a big believer in that too. And so he's a land real estate guy, and I like to see my money in an account somewhere. So we have a good mix of both. We're well diversified. Yeah.
Oh, I love it so much. So Hannah, you have shared so much about your business, your personal life, how you and your husband are navigating wealth building as a couple and as a family. So I'm curious, I ask every guest, for the person who wants to be in your shoes, the woman who is building a business and growing her family, what advice would you give her? What would you say to her?
Yeah. So I knew Lyndsey was going to ask me this question. So I had a little bit of time to prepare, and I really thought I was going to, say something like poetic and beautiful. And what came out was to do it scared, because I realized, I was thinking back on my career, the first step that I took when I got my first job, and I knew that I was going to have to go door to door and actually get my name out there and stand in front of people and pitch stocks on their doorsteps. That was scary. It was really scary. I mean, I was a young 22-year-old, out there talking to people about their money and their retirement. And so that was scary. And I had another kind of venture in between then, where I started a money coaching business before I transitioned into that ultra high net worth management. And that was scary. Back in 2021, posting videos of myself online and reels, that was scary, but it was all a launching pad, right? Going and accepting the job to work with ultra high net worth clients, and knowing that there was going to be a lot asked of me and my brain and expertise, and I was going to be stretched, and getting my CFP while my husband was on a deployment, and just that was all scary. And so I think the common thread throughout all those decisions, even though they were really scary, is that I trusted myself. And so it's like, do it scared and trust yourself along the way, because if I would have let the fear of the what ifs and the if this doesn't work out, what if I fall on my face, and if this doesn't happen, I mean, starting the Wealth Collaborative, that was scary. I had just received a massive promotion at work that came with a bonus and a nice bump in pay and all the things. I was really well on my way to become a partner there by the time I was in my early 30s. And so it was scary to leave that all behind and start something of my own, but I really trusted myself. And so I still obviously don't feel like I have made it. If someone was desperate to be in my shoes right now, I would be honored and grateful to even have that compliment. But I think I have just done scary things and trusted myself along the way. And I just, because we talk so much about spouses too, it's like, obviously all of those transitions came with conversations with my husband. I mentioned we've been together almost 13 years. And so even though they were scary, I trusted myself and had so much conviction in what I knew that I could accomplish. And I went to him with that conviction every single time. And then that fueled his belief in me. And then, from there, that's where I just feel like, thank God I did it scared, but I trusted myself anyway, because now I feel like my support system really believes in me. And that's really all I need to keep going. So
I know you said you weren't going to say anything poetic, but that was pretty poetic, Hannah.
thank you.
And it rings true in every category of life: motherhood, business, professional life, personal life, wealth, personal finances, marriage, like doing things scared and not letting that stifle you from where you want to be. I think that was perfectly poetic and appropriate.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. It's just crazy to think what has happened in the last 7 years of life. And really, it's just getting started. We're just at 1 year in this business, and this is what I plan to do for forever. I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
And I'm so grateful that you came today to share with us and to drop some knowledge on something, again, that is kind of a scary topic. Again, this transition from, what many of us go through in corporate life, where everything is like, exactly what you're making, exactly what allocations you're making, your benefits, and then building a business, buying a business, and then really having to think about revenue versus profit, and then transitioning into wealth. But if I hear correctly, wealth has to be at the forefront of that before you start making X, Y, and Z dollars.
Biggest piece of advice for sure is to really think long term about your life and how your business can be the vehicle to get you there, as long as you know what steps to take, what strategy to follow. Just don't do it blind, right? You can do it scared, but don't do it blind. So.
Yep. And bring in a partner like Hannah and Allie.
Yeah, would love that.
Perfect, Hannah. So where can our listeners, our watchers, where can our community of entrepreneurs find you and the Wealth Collaborative outside of this podcast?
Yes, so we're on Instagram at The Wealth Collaborative. You'll see a mix of me and Allie showing up there. And then we have a podcast called The New Money Podcast, where we interview some incredible women and entrepreneurs on that podcast, but we also record a lot of episodes where we are breaking down a lot of the financial jargon and things that are hard to understand, things that are going on in the world today that just we feel like women need to know about. And so it's all shared on the New Money Podcast. You can listen on Spotify, and we release new episodes every Thursday.
Oh, love it so much. And also sign up for the newsletter. I feel like so much is in your newsletter that points to all of those things.
The weekly newsletter is called Social Currency. And so, we share a lot of strategies, and I just want all the ladies to have all the knowledge. So we drop a lot of that in the newsletter.
Yes. And I'm thankful you do. I'm so glad that we got to catch up. I look forward to catching up with you on a few other things after the podcast, hopefully meeting you in person and watching the Wealth Collaborative grow. I'm so pumped for you guys and really, really look forward to what's to come in the future.
Thank you, Lyndsey. Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. I'll see you soon.